what this team needs to carry on forward into the postseason.
Kyle Whittingham announced that Cam Rising is not on Utah's roster.
Jimmy Butler met with Pat Riley last week to discuss his future in Miami.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The Philadelphia Eagles need more from Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast.
Let's get into some Birds talk, and I want to talk about Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore. And I think everybody knows, it's obvious that the performance on Sunday was simply not good enough when it comes to winning a championship. Right? I think it was good enough to beat the Green Bay Packers on Sunday because of how elite the run game was, how elite the defense was, and that's going to continue. I'm not going to say the passing game needs to be substantially better for the Eagles to win a Super Bowl. Like, I don't think they need to be this elite juggernaut that they were in 2022 for what would be the next 3-game run in the playoffs to hoist Lombardi yet again. But can the Eagles win a title the way they played Green Bay week after week? No. The passing game does have to be better than that. Does it have to be much better? Again, no. This team has the best defense and run game in football right now. And that's not an understatement or an overstatement. They should carry you the majority of the way. They're going to beat the Rams this Sunday primarily off the backs of their run game and their defense, just like they did when they played Los Angeles in LA earlier this year. I truly believe, honestly, that some people just don't want to win this way, and that's why they say the Eagles cannot win a Super Bowl without passing the football. Like, I think there needs to be a certain floor that you have to get to as a passing offense, and normally, year after year, you have to have a certain standard of passing to be a consistent contender. But for this year's Eagles team, as I've said on the episodes all year, you have to do what's best for this year's football team, and that is let the run game and the defense carry you because, again, they are the number one defense in football right now, and they're the number one run game. So those two things can win you a championship. They can get you at least to the Final Four. But I will say, and I love, again, that Hurts and the coaching staff have recognized that, what this team does best, and they don't want to get in the way of that. They don't want to hurt them by turning the football over, by being too aggressive. But they have to be better than what they were Sunday. That was far too conservative of a game plan from a passing perspective on Jalen Hurts' end and Kellen Moore's, and it was far too inefficient. The 3rd and long play calling, I mean, there's 3rd and 12s. They're calling up quarterback draws and just direct runs to Saquon Barkley. I don't think Jalen Hurts handled pressure all that well. They didn't complete a pass for 5 straight drives. The Eagles had 2 interceptions in the second quarter that the Eagles offense turned into 0 points. Like, you can't have that. There will be times, and again, I'm not saying the passing game is going to have to carry you in the playoffs. They will not. But there will be some times, maybe against Matt Stafford next week, maybe against the Detroit Lions. Certainly, if the Lions make it to the Final Four in the conference championship, there will be times against the Lions, against Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen in the Super Bowl, where Jalen Hurts needs to be special, or where Jalen Hurts in the passing game needs to be at least more aggressive than what they were against the Packers to put teams away better. Again, the Eagles, they played with their food against Green Bay. There were multiple drives where the Packers made it a 1-score game in the second half. And if the Eagles passing game, I felt like sometimes in that game could have went for the jugular and they pulled that off, this game would have been out of reach a lot earlier. So, no, I don't think suddenly they need to completely change their philosophy. The passing game needs to look elite for the Eagles to win a Super Bowl because they have a special combination of elite physical defense. All 3 levels of the defense are playing, it looks like, historically good right now. And they have the best run game I have ever seen in the NFL. One of the best run games the NFL has ever seen in its 100-plus years of existence. So the passing game needs to be better than it was Sunday. Needs to be more aggressive at times There will be times against better teams as the playoffs go on that, no, you can't have 125 yards through the air. You can't go 5 straight drives where the passing game looks that lackluster. But I also don't think, I think some of the national narratives that are being created this week about it are going too far. I think the Eagles are so talented across the board that no, Jalen Hurts does not need to be the 2022, even the first half of 2023 quarterback, the majority of the run for them to continue this run. Again, there will be times he has to, but at the same time, I like that this Eagles team recognizes their strengths, who they are right now, and they're leaning into it. And their run game and defense have been absolutely incredible, and I think that's what's going to carry them against the Rams on Sunday. And by the way, too, I really think the other thing is I'm not concerned that next week, maybe in the NFC Championship, maybe in the Super Bowl, that when those situations arise, that the passing game needs to be better, that Jalen Hurts needs to be special, I'm not concerned that he can't do it. Because, and even look in that game against the Packers, the 2 clutch drives in the second half when Green Bay made it a 1-score game, those 2 drives made me optimistic, where Jalen Hurts goes 3 for 3, 61 yards, the passing touchdown to Dallas Goedert, where he called the audible to go back up 2 scores. Then the next drive after Green Bay scores again, he goes 3 for 4. He gets them down the field. Jake Elliott kicks a field goal. They go back up 9. So even in these games where Hurts struggles a lot of the time as a passer, still in those gotta have it moments, he does perform at his best. And that's why I'm optimistic. And we've seen him do that this year a lot, where even the games he doesn't light up the box score as a passer, he still steps up when it matters most. And I think he will do that if he has to against the Rams, against the Lions, against the Chiefs, or whoever they would play in the Super Bowl. Is he going to do that all of the time if he doesn't have to? No. He's going to let Saquon and the defense carry them. He has understood that's his role this year. The coaching staff has told him to play more conservative this year. It's why I think he's not pulling the trigger at times when maybe there's a 30-yard play to be had. Instead, he takes the 10-yarder. Like, I think mentality-wise, the Eagles are coaching him to be that kind of player this year, and he's embracing it. But when he needs to be Superman, when he needs to be Batman and not Robin, I think he'll knock the rust off next week and move forward, and he'll be able to do that if his number's called. But he needs help, too. Like, Kellen Moore, the routes that were designed on Sunday, it has to be better. Those routes felt lazy. They felt predictable. Green Bay was all over it. There was no creativity at all. There simply was not a lot of separation. So, yeah, Jalen Hurts was rusty on Sunday. I don't think he handled pressure all that well. But at the same time, a lot of that performance was also on Kellen Moore. He was not helping his guys get open. He was not making it easy on Jalen. So they need to be better for the Eagles to win a Super Bowl. Absolutely. Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore. But do they have to be substantially better moving forward? No. They need to be timely and clutch. But this defense and run game, after rewatching that game, it is so good that I truly believe this year, in this year's version of the NFL, if that's carrying you the rest of the way, yeah, this team can still win a championship.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
What this team needs to carry on forward into the postseason.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a critical 3rd and 6 play on the game-winning drive, De'Ami Brown makes a clutch 21-yard catch to set the Commanders up for a playoff victory. We're going to talk about that here next on Locked On Commanders. And if you want to get even more out of the Locked On Commanders podcast, sign up to be a Locked On Commanders insider today. And from there, you will get live texts from practices, games, press conferences, all kinds of other times. All you have to do to be an insider is go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. It's free for the first 2 weeks. And not only are you going to get that, you're also going to get access to send me your text. You can send me your questions, your thoughts, your analysis, your opinions. We can have conversations. Agreeing is not a prerequisite to be an insider. Certainly can have a nice professional, if you want to call it that, or a cordial conversation about disagreeing points of view. Again, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to get even more out of the Locked On Commanders podcast. Our second sustain from the wild card round is going to be a play, and that play is the 3rd and 6 pass from Jalen Daniels to Dyami Brown for a gain of 21 yards on the eventual game-winning drive. So the Commanders came out for this play. They were bunched left in shotgun with Dyami Brown, the outside receiver, in that bunch set to the left. Jamison Crowder was the inside receiver, middle skill position player. Tight end Zach Ertz was lined up, stood up on the end, off the end, I should say, of the line of scrimmage nearest to the offensive line. Eckler lined up to the right of Jalen Daniels in shotgun as a running back, and Terry McLaurin, the receiver, split wide right facing press coverage from Buccaneers cornerback Zion McCollum. That was the formation. The Bucs come out with a too-high look. Middle of the field is open. 6 men in the box, just one defensive back at the line of scrimmage on the bunch side of the formation in a zone look alignment. Now at the snap, or as the snap becomes more imminent, I should say, the Buccaneers crawl up a little bit. Some of those defenders come up on the line of scrimmage, and at the snap, there are actually 7 Buccaneers defenders within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. 6 of those guys are smack dab on the line of scrimmage. They only rush 3. The 2 safeties drop super deep, but the linebackers don't really move out of the box. They pretty much are shadowing, trying to contain Jalen Daniels, kind of a group effort spy type of thing, if that makes sense. They don't really fan out, meaning that when Dyami Brown runs his deep dig route underneath Jamison Crowder's deeper post route, Jalen Daniels has plenty of room to make the throw without it underneath the defender in sight. Both safeties too deep to do anything about it. That's exactly what happens. Brown then looks the ball in. Very important. Before turning upfield, getting into Bucs territory with 3 minutes left in the game. Got down to the Tampa Bay 45, 3 minutes left on the clock. And now you just set the stage for Washington to drain the clock, force Tampa Bay to use its timeouts, set up a game-winning field goal that came with just seconds remaining to send the Washington Commanders to the divisional round of the playoffs. The play design, simply put, one of Cliff Kingsbury's more brilliant play designs. Pre-snap formation forces the defense to identify zone or man, because when they're in zone and a bunch look like that, it's all condensed in, it's all really tight. There's not a whole lot of conversation because pretty much guys know, okay, this is my zone, this is your zone, we're going to drop in, things like that. There might be some communication of like, hey, watch for this, watch for that. But when you're in man, there's a lot more conversation, there's a lot more shifting. Honestly, there's a lot more almost anxiety coming from the defense because they know, well, you got that bunch look, you got crossers, you could have guys going one way, another way, pick plays, all kinds of stuff could be on, so they got to kind of ramps up the tension a little bit. So when you see those defenders come out and just kind of get into their space, not really communicating a lot, it kind of gives you a really good sign that the defense is going to be in zone. So that kind of gives Jalen Daniels information that he doesn't need to use motion to get. Now, it also, this formation provides Jalen Daniels with multiple options. So from what I can see, in case of the blitz, Ertz is running a short route. So if he's got to use a hot, he's got Zach Ertz hot, and then Zach Ertz just has to get upfield and try to convert that third down. A little bit harder to do than we're saying it, but that's something that's an option. A blitz side, if they do that. Now, if they go front side on the play and blitz, then he can scramble out of it, stress the linebacker into either giving up yards on the ground or uncovering Zach Ertz, in which case Jaden can look to complete a pass to his tight end. If the linebackers vacate the box and drop back or fan out, then Daniels has a little bit more room to maybe do something with his legs if he can't find a receiver. If the safeties don't bail and get deep, well, then the deeper route to Jamison Crowder potentially comes available, while dialing up against zone means that Brown has the flexibility to flatten that route out a little bit as much as possible based on what the coverage is doing, which is exactly what he does. He gets really flat. It's not a dig in the traditional sense. Like he doesn't like come settled, chop his feet, all those things. More of a speed in, I suppose. Speed out is more what you hear about, more kind of a speed in, if you want to call it that. But he flattens it out really well, creates some separation from the defensive back, and is able to come open for his quarterback. Just perfect play design, great play design, perfect execution, especially by Dyami Brown. Gets the ball, looks it in, is able to get the first down and get into Buccaneers territory. From a team perspective, we want to sustain the penalty reduction that we saw on Sunday night. Only 5 penalties total on the Washington Commanders in the wild card round, just 2 of them on the offense. You had a false start on Zach Ertz and an illegal man downfield on Andrew Wiley. Obviously, you would love to eliminate all of those penalties, but having just 2 on the offense, you can live with that a little bit more than some of the other things that we've seen. 2 other penalties were declined in this game. They were both offside penalties, one on the defense, Dante Fowler Jr., one on special teams, Jeremy Reeves. That one on special teams, Jeremy Reeves, was the first penalty of the game, and it was declined after the Buccaneers made a field goal, something that Buccaneers fans are not very happy for. They would rather have seen Todd Bowles take the penalty, turn the 4th and 5 field goal or 4th and 7 field goal into a 4th and 2, and then go for it the way that Dan Quinn likely would have. So that's our final sustained improvements in the penalty arena. Certainly, again, you'd rather have 0 than 5, but you'd rather have 5 than 11 or 12, right? 3 things we want to trash in week 18. Again, we're going to start with player. And again, I'm just going to give my my normal disclaimer. We're not saying to trash the player. We're saying to trash the player performance, i.e. we want the player to simply get better, because we're talking about rookie left tackle Brandon Coleman, the lowest graded offensive player according to PFF, with a 35.2 overall grade. And if you're not familiar with PFF's grading, 35.2 is very bad. 19.9 pass blocking grade, so that's even worse. And yeah, it was evident on the field, Brandon Coleman not having his greatest performance of the season, certainly looking like a little bit of a rookie in his first playoff game. Gave up 6 pressures on 44 pass blocking reps, 4 hurries, 2 hits on the quarterback. And honestly, it would have been a lot worse if Jaden Daniels wasn't Jaden Daniels. So not only do I want to see Brandon Coleman obviously get a little bit better, we know he can play better. He knows he can play better. I'm not worried about whether the ability is there, just has to actually show up. But also, the Detroit Lions blitz a lot. They're 5th most in the league this season in blitzes, so they may need to give him a little bit of help. We remember earlier in the season, they were giving a lot of chip blocks. They still give chip blocks, the Washington Commanders offense does, but they were giving it a lot more early in their season. I think it was time to go back to that a little bit against the Detroit Lions. So hopefully we'll see that. Stash the team, the rushing game. Still, offensive rushing game outside of Jaden Daniels, nearly non-existent. I say nearly because it wasn't totally non-existent, but this team's got to figure something out, man. Brian Robinson Jr., 1.6 yards per carry in the wild card round is a career low. His previous career low was 1.67 yards per carry. This is 1.6 yards clean. This is 1.67 yards carry last year, week 5 against the Chicago Bears, when the Commanders got smacked by the Bears 40-20 in that home loss. They lost Jeremy Reeves to a torn ACL on the same night. So not a good night for the Washington Commanders, as you might remember if you are a Washington Commanders fan of at least 2 years now. Austin Eckler did have a 3.4 yards per carry average. It's not the 4 yards. 4 yards is kind of the floor to say he had a quote-unquote good game. But Austin Eckler, 3.4 yards per carry, certainly better than 1.6 yards, right? More than twice as good. Chris Rodriguez, inactive in the wild card round, has shown the ability to be effective. Robinson's longest carry of the game was 5 yards. He had 7 carries that went for 2 yards or less, and multiple of those 7 carries were for losses. Also contributed with 4 catches for 22 yards. So B-Rob's overall offensive contributions, not great, but not terrible either. It's a season high in receptions for him, but the running game with Brian Robinson simply is not working anymore. B-Rob looks tentative. He looks unsure of himself. There's actually a stretch there where he looked more sure of himself. It kind of looked like that old B-Rob who got the ball, found a spot, put a foot in dirt and go for it. And then sometimes he just kind of danced. He's kind of hesitant. Doesn't look like he's got a lot of confidence back there. Again, I don't know if it's injury related, if that right leg maybe is just kind of bothering him more than we know. I don't know if it's losing trust in the hole's going to be there in the offensive line. I don't know what it is exactly, but whatever it is, man, if you're going to continue to feature Brian Robinson, which, again, I still think in a vacuum, he's the best running back they have. They got to figure this out, or you got to go to featuring Austin Eckler, making Chris Rodriguez active, all these things. Whatever it is, they got to get that figured out, because they're going to need it. You know what I mean? Just bluntly. We keep saying this, but I'll be honest with you, man. They keep winning with Jaden Daniels being their leading rusher. So I don't know. Maybe they don't need it, but you certainly would like to have it if you don't need it, right? Finally, the last play, or the play that we want to get rid of, isn't really a play on the Washington Commanders so much as it is just the way the pass interferences were called in this game. Fortunately, it didn't derail the game completely, but there was certainly a stretch there. It's not team controlled, it's official controlled. But first, down 10-3, Bucs wide receiver Mike Evans clearly extends his arm and pushes Marshawn Lattimore off on an inside dig route. Marshawn was in his hip pocket running the route for him. Absolutely would have been in position to get an arm into the cradle, potentially knock that ball away. Instead, Mike Evans pushes him off, gains 20 yards. On the very next play, Mike Evans then pulls Marshawn Lattimore into his body and draws a defensive pass interference from the same official that Marshawn Lattimore started yelling at after he didn't get the push-off flag. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's petty and unprofessional and BS. I don't know. You be the judge. Mike Evans, look, he's a Hall of Famer. He is, okay? And I love Mike Evans. I love his game. Love his talent. The dude is really good too. But he is known to push off, man. It is a part of his reputation. Everybody knows it. The officials know it. They know to look for it. It came. They didn't flag it, and then they gave him a cheap DPI on the very next play. It puts the Buccaneers at the 1 yard line. They eventually get a touchdown there. It's a big situation. And then again, you're punishing Marshawn Lattimore for being frustrated.
Kyle Whittingham announced that Cam Rising is not on Utah's roster.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes.
The news that's been a long time in the making, it seemed like, but Cam Rising is no longer on Utah's roster. Kyle Whittingham said that him and Cam have talked a few times, and he'll let Cam himself divulge his plan, but he's no longer on our roster. We'll let him announce what his plans are when he wants to. My reaction is I'm not shocked by this. The Devin Dampier addition, the other quarterback moves, it didn't make sense with his injury history for Cam to return to Utah. Wish him nothing but the best, an absolute legend, but I felt like this was in both parties' best interest, Moose.
I absolutely agree. You look at Coach Beck coming in, he looks for what's called a Thorderback, is what he calls it. Because Thor had just come out and he had Taysom Hill, and he's like, I need quarterbacks that play like this. And he's looked for that everywhere he goes. Guys that are dual threat, that can get around the pocket, that can buy time for the offensive line, that make everything go. And you look at him, he'd go empty a lot last year because Devin Dampier was basically a running back. And so he's like 5 wide receivers, maybe 2 tight ends, 3 receivers, and let our quarterback be our running back and see what we can do. And it confuses defenses. It does a lot of things. But Cam Rising doesn't fit that mold at this point in his career. He's a 64-year-old man. Just kidding. But he's up there. He's in his 8th year of playing. A lot of guys that he came out with are like Trevor Lawrence. You see dudes that were freshmen the same time he was, and it's like these guys are on their 2nd contract. Cam, most likely, what I hope for him is that he finds an offense that fits his style, goes, plays, gets as far in the playoffs as possible, and then goes out into the NFL. He needs that extra year to get out of the injury bug cycle. And if he can do that, we're going to be in a good situation. But it's oil and water right now. It just doesn't mix.
It didn't for the last couple of years. I actually want to get back to Cam in one moment. You said something I find very interesting, and I do agree with at times that Devin Dampier they just utilized his running more than anything. I do feel confident in Devin Dampier's ability to lead Utah back to a Big 12 contender status this coming year. You talked about his running ability. How much faith do you have in Devin Dampier's arm for Utah football?
You know what? His arm is very interesting. He had 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He was learning. He's a young kid. I mean, he's not on his 8th, 9th year. He was learning a lot, and he was doing it with a cast that doesn't look like Utah's. Mm-hmm. I mean, you put roster to roster against each other. New Mexico wasn't Utah, but I love that they're reworking the Utah offense. I love what Coach Beck says. He's like, we're looking for guys we can trust. I don't care if it's tight ends. I don't care if it's wide receivers. I don't care if it's running backs. I don't care if it's a quarterback. I want guys I can trust out there. And that's going to make Utah's offense unlock to a whole new level because it's not just forcing the 12 personnel or the 13 personnel or the 14 personnel. It's saying, hey, who's our best guy out here that we can trust? Let's get him the ball. And it's been really interesting because Coach Beck has put tight ends in the NFL. He's put receivers in the NFL. He's put quarterbacks in the NFL. And he's put linemen in the NFL. So you're sitting there and you're like, what is he going to do? And no one knows. And that's what makes it so exciting to watch a Beck offense because he pulls from everywhere. He's super smart and he adjusts to the roster. And I think in this day and age, that changes everything. But Devin Dampier as a thrower, I think is really good. But he's not going to have to run as much when you've got Fano and you've got Lomu protecting the bookends. And I think we'll figure out the interior this time around. But Devin Dampier, if he does get some A-gap pressure, he's fast enough, he's slick enough to run outside, find his target, and deliver a strike, and he doesn't have to force it as much anymore. At New Mexico, he had to put up 50 points a game to win. With this Utah defense, you don't have to force the ball. It's okay going and letting the punter punt. As long as the ball hits the foot of a kicker or punter at the end of a series, I'm considering it a win because Utah's defense is going to be that good this next year.
Yeah, I'm excited about what the defense can do. Really excited about what Devin Dampier can do too. And guy only sacked 4 times last year, to your point, Moose. So he's got the ability to get out of pressure, and that is something that'll be big for Utah. Getting back to Cam Rising, we touched on it a little bit, and I like the analogy you used of water and oil. Just unfortunately for Cam too, the best ability a quarterback can have is availability. and Cam Rising, simply put, was just not available enough. The injuries plagued him. You couldn't move forward with him as your starting quarterback, in my opinion, because if you bring him in, if you say, oh, Cam Rising's our guy, then the best quarterbacks in the country are not going to want to come to your program because they're going to be like, why would I be a backup? Versus you can land a guy like Devin Dampier because Dampier sees a path to start, doesn't have to deal with the quarterback controversy of, oh, if Cam Rising is healthy, will he be the guy? Questions remain too, just after so many continued injuries. Like, will Cam ever be the quarterback he was in 2022? I don't know that. And I'd be curious to see what his announcement is. He chose not to enter the fall or the winter portal. That leads me to think he's going to declare for the NFL draft, but nothing has been made official yet. But a lot of love for Cam Rising, as we said at the end of the day too, Moose, and definitely just wild that this is how it ends up played out. I thought Cam was going to be the one to announce it. He still gets to be that one, but by waiting, he kind of forced Kyle Whittingham's hand to have to make a statement about it.
Yeah, he did. And maybe he's ready to go to the NFL, give it that shot and go. And if he is, kudos to him. Maybe he's like, I want to get into coaching. There's so many things because as of right now, his injury record, it's not a draftable position at this point. So maybe he at quarterback too, like there's only like in all reality teams take 2, maybe 3 quarterbacks, maybe 3. And so it's a losing proposition if they're not invested in you and you're just a fringe draftable guy. And so there's too many question marks right now for him. I think the best thing for him to do would be go play another year if he's allowed it, or get on with his life and start coaching or doing whatever makes him happy.
Yeah, I would agree. If I was advising Cam, I would say probably go into coaching. I would if he could get back to health, would love to see him try and chase an NFL spot. UDFA at best, as you and I both agree, Moose, and even at that, like I said, could be tough. Maybe he would even have to go to a USFL and try to work his way up from there just because of what the injuries have been, and that's where maybe a college team will be interested in trying to bring him on, as he is a guy, if he can stay healthy, who's accomplished a lot compared to what most college quarterbacks have. So we'll keep an eye on Cam Rising, but at the moment too, and we'll do an episode once he finally makes his statement about just his legacy and the impact he's had on the Utah football program. But as Kyle Whittingham said, Cam Rising is officially no longer on the Utah football roster.
From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Impossible, right? Well, right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 300 smackaroos in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement for the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. The Rams crushed the Vikings, but aren't getting any respect as they head into the matchup with the Eagles. I tell you, FanDuel has Philly favored by 6.5 points. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Dominate Mississippi State, the number 15th ranked team in the country. Auburn doesn't have Janai Broome. It doesn't matter. Welcome into the special live edition of Locked on Auburn. I'm Zach Blackerby. He is Daryl Dappridge, Montgomery radio legend. What we saw tonight was incredible. We've seen Auburn win Maui. We've seen them go to Houston and beat Houston. But Daryl, what they did tonight, to me, up to this point this season, this very impressive season so far, this was the most impressive thing I've seen so far for this team.
Absolutely. Hands down, because there's a lot of different factors, but you've touched on them. Oh, we're doing a little switch. I saw the finger go up. I got a little concerned. Love it. That's exactly what we need to do. We need to boog.
Let's go.
I'm running out of adjectives to describe this team, and I will say this is the most impressive win for a couple reasons. Number one, you do it without your best player. With a minute left to go in the game, your walk-ons are in against the number 15 team in the country. That right there speaks volumes. And the third thing that makes me feel really, really good about this win and why it's so impressive, there was a little bit of that trend When Auburn got up 26 and they let Mississippi State get it to 13, you figure, okay, this is not good. This is a trend. Auburn's got to clean this up. And they get it back up to 24 or 26 within 2 or 3 minutes. Answer that and close out the game by winning by 22. That, to me, is almost just as important as what the final score was.
It's just they keep finding ways to impress you. Every single time it's like, okay, well, if they do this, that'd be great. And it's just they keep finding ways to do, and they don't just do it. They just pass every test you give them with flying colors. I mean, what was the narrative going into this? Okay, obviously no Janai Broome. Mississippi State, a very physical team. Chaney Johnson, let's see if you can do it. Chad Baker-Mazara, let's see if you can do it. And what, Chad scored 17 in the first half. Chaney scored, 12 or 13 in the first half?
It was 18 for Chad Baker-Mazara, 13 for Chaney. They had 31 of the 46 Auburn points. And then you figure, okay, in the second half, that trend can't continue. So Kelly, Pettiford, and Denver pick up the slack and completely shift the narrative in the second half and carry the water. That's why this team is so – and even Dylan had a nice second half. That's why this team is so good and so dangerous. The other narrative, Zach, was can Dylan and Chaney play disciplined basketball enough to stay out of foul trouble because your bench is a little shorter? And Dylan Cardwell had 1 foul at halftime.
Yeah.
That was now he only
finished with 2 on the game.
Finished with 2. I mean, I get it. He didn't have 18 points, but his presence on the floor for 20 plus minutes is very important defensively, rim rattling dunks, bringing the house down. He is your spiritual leader of this team. He's your captain, in my opinion. You got to have him on the floor. Him and Chaney adjusted their game, did what they had to do to stay on the floor, and the result is a 22-point boat racing bleep whipping is what it is. B to A was what happened tonight.
No kidding. And it just seemed like everybody who played had their moments, right? I mean, Chad with a hot start, Chaney with the hot start, Tahad Pettiford with one of the best dunks of the year, the alley-oop to Dylan from half court, where then, which definitely, I think the game was already over, but it certainly felt like a dagger. And then the broadcast crew zooms in on the Mississippi State coach, and he just looked dead inside, just a total demoralizing opportunity. Because if you're Mississippi State, I mean, let's think about this from the Mississippi State point of view for a second. They're the number 15 team in the country. They're going on the road to face the new number 1 ranked team without their best player. They had a great opportunity to make a statement.
You got a target on your back when you're number 1 in the country. The last thing you want to do, Zach, is when you get ranked number 1 in the country, the very next night is get beat. That's, to me, that's a bad omen. That's a bad thing. And that Mississippi State, as good as they've played this year, it's very difficult for them to lose 2 games in a row. So for them to come into Auburn without Auburn's best player, Auburn with the bullseye on their back, number 1 team in the country, all of the stars were aligning because Mississippi State and Chris Jans, let's make no mistake about this, okay? He is a very good coach that gives Auburn fits. He just does. Defensive. Auburn goes into the hump last year and gets what the game was in the 40s or the 50s. It was awful. It was like 1952 basketball. I thought there was a peach basket up there. And they absolutely did what they had to do from a schematic standpoint. He's the same coach that almost upset Auburn in the first round of the 2019 NCAA tournament. He has Auburn's number a little bit and he's a really good coach. So for Auburn to do this tonight without their best player, with a guy that gives them problems, speaks volumes. It speaks volumes. You said something, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. It's a generational type basketball team right now. They are. Now, whatever happens in March is going to define this. We don't hang banners at Auburn for stuff that happens in January, despite what other fan bases think. You don't hang banners for being ranked number 1 in the AP poll, okay? But what they're doing right now bodes well for March. Because they can beat you in a variety of ways with a variety of personnel. And I mean, they're 16-1. Let's not we can focus on
And
tonight,
up to
the
this
big
point,
picture.
the toughest schedule in the country. And you have one loss, and it's a close road loss against Duke, who's right there behind you in the rankings.
I absolutely think that being 4-0 in this conference, to start out 4-0, to play the way you did in your non-conference, to survive a couple of lackluster performances in the second half of Texas and the first half of South Carolina. But make no mistake, this is what's so great about this team. When Auburn took that 19-point lead at the end of the first half, they were plus 29 in two halves of basketball. The second half of South Carolina, the first half of this game, plus 29. That's how you answer a couple of lackluster halves. Second half against Texas, first half against South Carolina. You get it right, you right the ship, and you go and be a plus 29 without your best player. That plus 29 was without Janai Broome, both halves almost. I can't even fathom it really, but it does speak to 8 seniors and the depth on this team. And,
like you could have told me this was going to happen. I would have been like, okay, cool. Like everything has to go your way. And like certain guys got hot or whatever, but it didn't really feel like everything went Auburn's way. It just felt like they were just way better than Mississippi State from start to finish.
I'll tell you this. I wouldn't have believed Auburn was going to win this game by 22 had Broome played. Like if you told me last week Broome doesn't get hurt, Auburn plays South Carolina, they come back home to play Mississippi State, I'm happy with a 12-point win with Broome, because that's how much I respect what Mississippi State has done to this point in the season. So to do that, to be up 26 and win by, again, I'm going to repeat it for effect, kind of like the Boog hat is effect.
Yeah, go ahead.
Auburn had its walk-ons in with a minute left to go in a conference game against the number 15 team in the country.
Without your best player. Without the best player in college basketball.
This one did feel like the most complete performance as far as most important. Because you can go to Maui preseason and you can win with the way Broome was playing, and you can go to Houston, but you are in conference against a team that's 15th in the country without your best player, and you put together that kind of performance. To me, it's the most impressive and the most important win of the season.
It means a lot for sure. And I'm seeing national folks say like the best team in college basketball, it's not close. And I don't really know what the argument against it is at this point. I don't know.
You emphatically answered any questions that anyone may have by putting you at number 1 in the AP poll yesterday, because you come out the next night against, again, the 15th ranked team of the country without your best player and win by 22. So you answered that narrative. If there was anybody, whatever. I mean, 60 of the 62 votes, okay, Duke got a vote for number 1, and I think so did Florida. And I would suspect the Florida voter probably has a condo in Gainesville somewhere. And that's pretty impressive to get 60 of the 62 votes. I mean, how do you – now, you got to take care of business Saturday in a very, very which turned out to be a tough game in Georgia with the way they're playing on the road. But what Auburn did now, you enjoy it tonight. You go ahead and you take – it was a punctuation mark type game is what it was.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels.
Ole Miss just finished off a 74-64 victory over the Alabama Crimson Tide. It was a defensive clinic. It was absolutely amazing. And if I can just say this, Malik Dia is a grown man. 21 points, 19 rebounds. He was the best player on the court. You were playing against a top 5 team, and Malik Dia was the best player on the court. I thought I had seen for the last couple of days. I think that Malik Dia has turned into the alpha on this team. I think that Malik Dia was becoming a special player. And lo and behold, he's turning into an NBA player right before our eyes. He is dominating games. He is such a handful to deal with. This Ole Miss team is 4-0. 4-0 on the season into the SEC. Road game against Mississippi State this weekend. This we talked about all week and all season. This was a race to 8 in the SEC. Now it's at the point where 8 might just happen. That's there. They're doing what they need to do. If this continues, this might be a race to 12. This might be a race to 14 because this Ole Miss basketball team that played tonight is good enough to win the entire freaking SEC. This team defensively is absolutely special. We talked about the no middle defense, and Tim Thomas comes on the show every week. I'll interview him tomorrow. We're going to put the show up on Friday. So we'll talk about this game a little bit on Friday. But Chris Beard and his no middle defense completely befuddled Alabama. They made livings off of giant skip passes for 3-point shots, and they were really good at getting open looks. But every time they tried the giant skip pass, there was an Ole Miss player sitting right there to where they were completely befuddled. You couldn't drive. They completely forced them out of the middle. Talk about Mark Adams coming in of the no middle defense fame, one of Chris Beard's original assistants at Texas Tech. This Ole Miss basketball team is special, is really good. And we thought about at the beginning of the season that, okay, let's just go there, try to get to 8. This is a tournament team. I believe this is a tournament team. Win the game against Georgia. We don't know how good Georgia is, but again, that Georgia game, Ole Miss started out slow, eked into the game at halftime, second half dominated the game. Did that against Georgia. Fine, fair enough. Went up to Arkansas, same script. Slow start, get back into the game, second half completely dominate the game. Third game, LSU, same thing. Slow start, get to halftime, second half, dominate the game. Now you're going on the road to number 4 ranked Alabama. The best team that Ole Miss has played this entire season, if you want to go by rankings. Somewhat of a slow start. They did not shoot the ball particularly well, although the defense was there from the very beginning in this game. This was 40 minutes of defense from Chris Beard and the Ole Miss Rebels, and it was absolutely fantastic. Alabama was up by, I think, 4 at halftime. Second half, Ole Miss completely dominated the game. Again, same script every single week. The second half of the game, Ole Miss is absolutely taking teams apart. And they're playing old-style basketball with mid-range jumpers and things like that. This is absolutely fantastic and fun to see. I'm getting pretty fired up. I'm starting to get in. I was a student at Ole Miss in 97. Whenever they played Temple in the NCAA tournament, the next year I was up there. So this is kind of reminding me when Ole Miss kind of got that going during that time frame. You know, the Valpo year and the year that Ole Miss were Keith Carter and all that playing. This is kind of starting to feel like that. I think that was back-to-back SEC West championships. But this Ole Miss team can win the SEC. The team that played tonight can beat anybody in the conference. I don't care if it's Auburn. I don't care if it's Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, whoever's in front of Ole Miss. The team that played tonight, Ole Miss can win. That's the way it is. And if Ole Miss is in a game rebounding, if you do not absolutely crush Ole Miss rebounding the ball, Ole Miss is going to beat you. That is what we're finding out. Whenever you cannot dominate the offensive boards, when you can't get second chance points, Ole Miss will beat you. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where we're playing. It doesn't matter anything like that. This was an absolutely fantastic game where Ole Miss just absolutely whipped Alabama's ass. Beat them up and down the floor. Alabama tried some threes. They went on some runs. There was that weird technical foul that got called where the SEC office tried to save Alabama and give them a 4-point play. They still only got 2 points because they missed the free throws. But Ole Miss was able to pull away against everybody. Everybody they've played has been a close game at halftime, and the second half, Ole Miss is absolutely dominated.
From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Impossible, right? Well, right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 300 smackaroos in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement for the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. The Rams crushed the Vikings, but aren't getting any respect as they head into the matchup with the Eagles. I tell you, FanDuel has Philly favored by 6.5 points. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Jimmy Butler met with Pat Riley last week to discuss his future in Miami.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast.
David, the Jimmy Butler stuff does not stop. Here's what we learned on Tuesday. Jimmy Butler and Pat Riley met face-to-face, and Butler reiterated his desire to get traded. Jimmy told him that he will not sign a new contract with the Heat. He's willing to pick up his option for next season, but only to facilitate a trade. That the Heat have engaged with multiple teams in trade talks around Jimmy Butler, have received offers for Jimmy Butler, but none that they like. The Heat are also expecting Jimmy Butler to return to the team for Friday's game against the Nuggets, and owner Mickey Arison plans to meet with Jimmy Butler on Friday, presumably before the game, and that the team will meet later this week to discuss options for how to handle Jimmy Butler for the rest of the season if he is not indeed traded. A lot to get to in today's episode, David. Yeah, a lot of stuff that, I think we kind of knew that was sort of reconfirmed on Tuesday and things like that. But what do you make of Jimmy's face-to-face with Pat Riley during this face-off?
Again, to reiterate, so much to kind of break down, and there's so many different nuanced levels that we could explore this in there. But the first thing I thought of when I heard this is that there's an element to this beyond just the money, because at least if I'm interpreting this correctly, it's that even had Pat Riley offered the extension or the contract that that Jimmy wanted, he wasn't going to accept it anyway. The bridge
during this face-to-face meeting.
During this face-to-face meeting, he's expressed that he does not want to play for the Miami Heat. So we had talked a lot about Jimmy's primary goal of requesting a trade was to get paid, and that's totally fine. But the report that came out today indicated that there were other elements that Jimmy might have been disenfranchised with regarding the team and the way that they didn't acquire said superstar. I thought those were not necessarily minimal. I just didn't think that they were as important a factor in Jimmy determining that he no longer wanted to play for the Heat. But between what Pat Riley said, between the friction between Eric Spoelstra, perhaps, likely, and Jimmy Butler, what Pat said in the last postseason press conference, and between the fact that that the Heat could not acquire another superstar to join Jimmy Butler in Miami, those factors all played a significant part in Jimmy not wanting to be here, aside from the money. The money is a factor, no doubt about it. But it seems like even had Pat Riley offered that money, there was much more beyond it and has weighed heavily on Jimmy and his decision to part ways with the team. So that was the first thing I took away from it, is that he's really upset with the way that the franchise has been run over the last couple of seasons, and he's not happy with the lack of moves that they've made.
Most divorces occur because of finances. A lot of divorces happen because of money, right? And I think this divorce starts with that. I think we're right to read that, had maybe Pat Riley offered the extension in the summer when he also offered the extension to Bam Adebayo, this stuff isn't happening. I do agree with you that it does feel like now, even if if now that Pat Riley offered the 2-year, $113 million max extension, that Jimmy would be like, here's two of my favorite fingers. See you later. And I think the part of that is because of the ego, because of all the sort of the additional, all this stuff that sort of festered and occurred between Pat Riley's comments and his end of season press conference and now. But it, again, going back to the divorce thing, it's like, I've never been divorced, but I'm trying to use this analogy. It's like you get divorced because of finances, and then all of a sudden you're fighting over the toaster. It's like, I never really cared about that toaster, but you're definitely not going to get that toaster, so I'm going to get that toaster. Now we're fighting over a toaster. And it feels like all this stuff is just toasters, right? Like you never got the superstar that I wanted. It's like, okay, this is coming out. Like, no, we're at the core issue here is the fact that the Heat did not offer Jimmy Butler that extension. And in not doing so, wounded him emotionally, insulted him to the point of no return. And a lot of and Pat Riley and the Heat front office and Jimmy Butler and his representation have done a lot of things since then that have basically made the situation worse. So the situation that started just about money has become a lot more of other things. But I guess ground zero for all of this was the money. But now all of this stuff is sort of piled on top of it now to the point of, there's no fixing this thing anymore.
No, they cannot. It's irreparable. So you mentioned the fact that Mickey Harrison was meeting with him, Pat meeting with him face to face. Like, the team is going all out and trying to find some way of smoothing this process out. But it seems like Jimmy has dug his heels and he is wounded. It's a good point. Like, the money, as much as the money means something, there's an emotional factor tied to it. Like, it's not just the money. The money is representative of your commitment to me, and you're saying thank you for being a franchise great player over the last 5.5 seasons. And the fact that they didn't offer him that money has hurt him on an emotional level that I would not have expected. I thought there would be more give and take in terms of what Jimmy and the front office could align with. Like, it could have been a more team friendly deal, if you want to look at it that way, but one that would pay him a lot of money. But obviously that's not the case. Like, it's just surprising to me.
I think Riley lit that option on fire when he called him out in his end of season press conference. It wasn't just that they didn't sign they didn't offer the extension, but Riley used a public space to basically be like, we're not happy with you either, and here are the things that we're unhappy with. I don't think Riley handled that at all the right way, and I don't think either side handled this.
He
much
can't
the
help
way.
it.
He can't.
Riley. He cannot,
and neither can Jimmy. Right?
And
These are two stubborn, strong-willed individuals who got to the places they are because of their stubbornness and strong will. And what had been a happy marriage for a very long time, an organization that could house and even kind of treat Jimmy's interested character traits that kind of got him in trouble in previous stops. They treat those as a badge of honor in a lot of ways. Right. But even those things, there's just an end point here, clearly, when the money kind of started to get involved here. And when, Jimmy Butler obviously did not play up to standard last year and everything that happened there. But what do you make of this, like, Mickey Harrison planning to meet with Jimmy Butler? This, according to the Sun Sentinel's Ira Winderman on Friday. That's like an unprecedented move. Mickey Harrison is not Jerry Jones, right? This is not a guy who gets involved in the sports product very much. So the fact that he's meeting with Jimmy Butler, like, what do you think that's all about?
The doomsday clock is at 11:59, basically, and there's this breaking out the final last stop for Mickey to say, as the team governor, team owner, we love you here. We want to show you how much we appreciate you here, and we want to be able to write the final chapter of your career here in Miami because you have meant this much to the organization. Like, I have to think that they're going to reiterate everything that they said and offer him that deal and see if they can smooth things over, because those things do appeal.
Offer him what deal?
Like, the deal he wants.
The extension?
Yeah. I think that's what they're going to do. I think that's what they're going to offer him, the final. Wow. I agree. But at the same time, it's like, why would an owner meet with a team? Like, this is because now we're facing backlash. We're seeing the team rather face backlash, and Pat Riley is that they keep pushing stars out. And, you see a number of players kind of side with the front office, et cetera. But I think they're learning their lesson to some extent from 2016 and how badly that was perceived around the league. It took a long time for them to kind of repair that public image and the image within basketball circles around the league.
Yep.
If you could do that to Dwayne, if you could force Dwayne out, and that's a player that you drafted and who in his third season carried you to a title, that's not a good look.
I think this is different though, because we discussed this earlier this week. Like, there is not a lot of sympathy for Jimmy Butler's situation. Like, a lot of people around the league view Jimmy as having quit, as having
as
kind of gone back on the contract that he's
retired players,
former players. But and I will tell you, within the there are a lot of people in the NBA now that see it through that lens. Like, Dwayne Wade played out his contract, and it kind of got, you know, frosty at the end there during the summer. But everybody expected Dwayne Wade to be back. It was a surprise when he wasn't. And when Pat Riley did mishandle it, he kind of mishandled it in a small window of time, where this has just sort of been drawn out. And I think there's a lot of dirty laundry obviously being aired right now. I would be surprised if Mick Garrison did that. I do wonder if this is just sort of a mediator type situation where, look, you obviously cannot meet with Pat Riley face to face. That did not help matters. That didn't work. You guys are both strong-willed, stubborn, hard-headed individuals. You guys don't need to be in a room together anymore. It's not Eric Spoelstra's place to do it, because as we're going to talk about, his job is already tough enough. So who else is left, right? It can't be like, it has to be Mickey Harrison. And maybe he says something to the effect of, look, we did have a weird sort of, our relationship with Dwayne was fractured. Our relationship with Shaquille O'Neal was bad when he left. And with each of those, like, both of those guys have their jerseys in the rafters here. That is still possible maybe for you too, if that's something that you want, if we can all handle this better than we've handled it
in the past
so far. And again, that's my best guess as to what it is just a shrewd businessman, Mickey Harrison, trying to do shrewd business and step in and mediate here is what I imagine might be the message. And maybe also like, hey, here are our options. We've went to the league office. We've asked about all these things. Like, this is we've done everything we can to try to appease you. These offers aren't out here. The trade that you want isn't materializing. This is what we got. Let's try to make the best of it. Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe he is going to be saying, you know what, screw it. Here's $113 million. Please make everything easier on us.